We asked Nadine to speak before our chapter on sexual trafficking. This is a rather difficult testimony to listen to, as it is quite painful, which is why she prefers to go by her first name only in the presentation, although she does provide her full name so those who are experiencing this trauma can contact her and her nonprofit organization. Nadine promised God that if she was able to climb out of her nightmare and live a normal life, that she would devote herself to helping other young women better their situation by leaving deeply abusive relationships. And we have a tendency to blame the women for sex trafficking, where they find it difficult to leave their abusers, which is not helpful to these young women. And this has been true for all time. Dozens of the laws listed in Leviticus testify to the rampant sexual abuse of a polygamous society, including forbidding intimacy with sisters, brothers, and in-laws of all kinds and other close relatives. But Leviticus also recognizes that in all intimate relationships there are close emotional ties, as a transliteral translation of the Hebrew exhorts men not to uncover the nakedness of their victims. Indeed, for those who are sexually trafficked in these worst cases, this sexual intimacy leads to deep trauma. And indeed, the church teaches us that we should respect the dignity of women in all intimate relationships. Our chapter also invited Tamara Davis of the M.J. Scarlett Foundation to speak about trafficking and homelessness as well. Her presentation includes other community resources that are available in South Florida, some of which are available nationwide.
The book Don't Match the Cover describes Nadine in a nutshell. Nadine is a nurse navigator, health educator, mental health counselor, advocate, mom, wife, and most importantly, she is a survivor. Nadine has experienced a significant amount of trauma in her life. Her journey to get here has been filled with highs and lows. However, those challenges have prepared her and taught her the significance of her why. Nadine made the promise that if God led her out of the darkness she was living in, she would devote the rest of her life advocating for young people who have lost their voice. Well, after many years, she is still fulfilling that promise. Her journey has been empowering, educating, and encouraging young people and those recovering from trauma. One of Nadine's beliefs is, no matter what you have gone through in your life, you can persevere, and it's never too late to find your voice. Stay in battle, changing your behavior, attitude, thinking, and environment. This will ultimately change your life.
So I decided to do my own nonprofit. I hadn't really thought about a nonprofit. And at the encouragement, Dr. Tamara Dawes, who has become a dear friend of mine, she said, why don't you start your own nonprofit? Because my goal was to educate, but not only educate, like my bio says, to empower other young girls and young women and men who were coming out of not only trafficking, but difficult situations. My story is long. It's a long story. It's been a lifetime of trauma. My story began at 11 years old, was when my abuse started, but my story began far from that. I came from a very dysfunctional, functional household. So people say, what is a dysfunctional, functional household? The functionality looks very familiar to people who are looking in. It's a great house, 2-parent home, big house, you know, they're taking care of the kids and everything's going on and wonderful, and they must have a great life. When it's plenty of dysfunction that's going on behind the closed doors that people don't know about. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. That's where I was born and bred and raised. And in the South, we don't air our dirty laundry. We don't talk about what goes on inside of our households. And then being African American, it's definitely a taboo. So in my household, what was going on that led to my abuse, and that's what I try to get people to understand, is that when children are being abused, it's prerequisites for that to happen. So my father was an alcoholic, drug addict. But we went to church. I went to school. Things were going on in the household with arguments between my parents, keeping us up at night with the arguing and fussing and fighting. And my father was a lover of guns, so eventually the guns would come out at night and he would hold us hostage and threaten to kill and shoot any and everything that moved. And then we'd get up the next morning and I would have to go to school and my mother would have to go to work and we'd have to smile and perform like everything was okay. And predators prey on children who come from dysfunctionality. My brother's wife introduced us, or me, to her older brother, who became like a big brother to me. And he groomed me for about a year. My mother would not let me sleep out of the house unless it was with one of her sisters or at her brother's house. I was not allowed to go to sleepovers or anything of that nature. And at the time, he had a daughter and a younger sister who I was close to at the time. And we would go eat pizza, we would go to the movies, and it took him about a year to kind of groom my mom and earn her trust. And he asked my mother, can she spend the night over? The girls are having a sleepover. My mother said no. And like I said, that went on for about a year. And then she finally said, well, he's been really good bringing her home when he's supposed to bring her home. He seems like a really good guy, blah, blah, blah. And she said yes. And the first night I spent the night outside of my mother's home, I was abused. The first night. He had it all planned out for when it would happen. And so it started off as sexual abuse, and that's the other grooming process, to where you trust the person and they gain your trust. And that went on for about 3.5, 4 years. And then at age 14 was when the trafficking started. It starts off as, we don't have any money, I don't have any money, I'm not working, how am I gonna pay my bills? You get what you call Stockholm Syndrome. And of course, you wanna help out, and what can I do? And it is, you can do this one favor for me. There's this guy I work with, he likes girls, he wants to sleep with the girl, and I trust you to do that, and he trusts me to trust you to do that. And I know you really want to help me. And it started off with me sleeping with men he worked with. And one person became another person, became another person. This whole time I'm still at home, never left my house, went to school, went to high school, middle school and high school, and everything was fine. My parents found out, and it became a mess, as my mother said. It became very confusing to them because my brother was in a happily married relationship, and here this happens, and what's going to happen when the police come and we have to go to court and we have to report all of this. It's going to cause a rift with the families, and my brother's marriage may not survive, so what do we do? So they decided to turn a blind eye, and we're not going to address this directly, but yet we're going to strictly, aggressively force you to stop dealing with this man. It's your fault. You're going to cause a lot of problems in the family because you're sleeping with a grown man. You're going to cause a lot of rift with your brother's marriage because you're sleeping with a grown man. So it became my fault. I wouldn't leave him alone. My brother became angry about this, and then he started physically abusing me. He's going to beat me until I leave the brother-in-law alone. And this went on until I was 18. Throughout this whole time, it's physical abuse, it's mental abuse, it's emotional abuse from both sides, from my family and from him. They become very aggressive, they become very mean. At this time, I'm trying to go to high school and finish high school, but yet the trafficking is becoming more and more and more. So I'm missing more and more days of school because I'm working during the daytime for him. My family would know I wouldn't be in school. But again, when I got home in the evening or at nighttime, I'd get a whipping from my brother because I missed school. And when it came down to graduate, the disciplinarian pulled me in the office and he said, "You're not graduating because you've missed over 47 days of school this year." And he said to me, "I know what's going on with you. You have to stop. It's your future that's involved in this. It's not his future. He's a man. He's done what he wanted to do in this life. You have to make the decision to leave him alone." So in this process, I have a whole community, and that's why I'm so involved in my community today in empowering young girls. I have a whole community that I live in, which is very small, like a Sunrise. Everybody knows everybody. It's a close-knit community. So everybody knew what was going on in my neighborhood and in my community. So the assistant principal lived around the corner from me. So he lived on the same street as my perpetrator. My perpetrator lived around the corner from my house. So the whole neighborhood knew. My neighbors knew. The neighbors across the street knew. His neighbors knew. His mom knew. His family knew. Everybody knew. But who did they blame? They blamed me for that. That I was the fast little girl in the neighborhood who had accosted this man, and I decided to do all the things that I was doing and enticed him to go along with it. So when the vice principal said to me disciplinarian, that I would not be graduating, I said, "Well, Mr. Williams, it's not my fault." And he said to me, "Yeah, but you can do something about it. You can stop dealing with him." So I had a whole community that failed me. When I graduated from high school, I graduated, and a week and a half later, he wanted me to come to Florida with him. He had come to Florida to go to truck driving school here in Pensacola, and he had gotten a place to live, and he said, "Finally, we graduate, you can come to Florida, we can be together, we won't have any restrictions, nobody can tell us what to do, it'll be just you and I." And I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go to Wiley College in Texas, and I wanted to go as far away as I could. And so I said to him, "I don't want to go. I want to go to college." And he said, "Okay, so what you're saying is you're not coming with me." And I said, "No, I'm not coming with you." He said, "Well, I don't have any money. I'm in truck driving school. I'm not working. I need you to help me out." So I said, "Well, all I can do, I can get my dad's Social Security check and my Social Security check, and I can give that to you." So I stole my dad's Social Security check and my check, and I went to the check cashing place to cash it. And he met me in the parking lot, and I handed him an envelope, and that's all I remember. He punched me, knocked me out, threw me in the car, and brought me to Florida. I woke up, we stopped at a rest area in Mississippi, and he had thrown a blanket over me, and I woke up, and he said, "If you go to the bathroom and you tell anybody you scream, I will kill you, put you in the woods, and your mother never find you." So, because you're scared always, I complied. And we finally ended up in Pensacola, Florida, where he trafficked me in Pensacola, Florida, for months. And I was kidnapped by another pimp, held at gunpoint and abused, and worked for him for maybe a day, day and a half, 2 days, before he brought me back to my original post where I was living with this person. And when I got there, this person beat me within an inch of my life because he thought that I willingly went with this guy to work with him. I woke up in a bed, bruised, sore, naked, and the people who were cleaning the hotel where we were living was standing over me. And I never forget, there were Asians, they were not speaking English, and the mother beckoned to the son and told him, I guess, to go to the bathroom, and he went and got a towel and put a towel over my head. And I remember I woke up and they were gone. And I was able to get to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror and I didn't know who I was. I had been saving money in a shoe, trying to plan my escape. And I remember running to the shoe and the money was gone. So I gathered as much as I could, clothes, I remember clothes on, and I went out of the window. And I saw one of the girls who I work with at the store, and I asked her to help me get to the bus station. And she helped me get to the bus station, and I didn't have any money. So when we got to the bus station, I told them what was going on, that I needed to get home to my mom. And I called my mom on the phone, and she talked to them, and the guy told me to go get on the bus that was waiting. And this is how God works. There was a bus waiting at that point to go to New Orleans. And I got on the bus, and he pulled up to the bus station while I was on the bus. And he saw me. And I remember telling the bus driver, if you open that door, he's going to kill me. And he was telling the bus driver to open the door. I was his little sister, and I was running away. And the people on the bus was telling him to drive off. So he drove off, and I remember sitting there, and there was a lady and a gentleman on the bus with me. And the gentleman told me it was going to be okay. I was safe. And I remember the first stop we got to, I got off the bus, and the lady came in the bathroom, and she helped me clean myself up and put the rest of the clothes that I had holding in my hand on. And these two people took care of me all the way to New Orleans. They bought me food at the stops that we went to. And I remember the lady got off in Mississippi, and she asked the gentleman, was he going to go with me? And he said, yeah, I'm going to go all the way with her. And he went all the way to New Orleans with me, and my brother was waiting at the bus station. And come to find out, he actually was supposed to get off in Mississippi, and he rode all the way with me. And he waited for the bus to go back. So when I got back, my brother picked me up from the bus station and took me straight to college. Stopped to see my mom, and he took me to Southern University. And the lecture I got all the way was, I've been worrying my mom, why do I keep doing this? What is it about this man? You know, you just want to be fast, you need to get yourself together, leave this guy alone. I had that whole lecture all the way to Southern. And when I got to Southern, a day later, he showed up. And he was coming to get me. And he harassed me for weeks. Weeks he harassed me. One day I came in from class, and the phone rang in my dorm suite, and one of the girls came to get me. And she said, you have a phone call, and it was him. And there was a window by the phones where we were, and he was telling me to look out the window, and he was standing there, and he was telling me he was going to kill me. And I remember crying, and I went down to the floor, and I was crying, and my roommate came in, and she said, what is wrong? And I started telling her and pointing to the window. Why you haven't been going to class regularly? Is this why you won't go out the room to eat? Because of him? And she took the phone and she started going off on him, and I was saying, you can't talk to him like that. He's gonna kill you. And she was using lots of nice words with him. And she dropped the phone and she ran in her room, and she used to always carry a switchblade. She was from Detroit. And she came back with the switchblade, and she went to the window with the switchblade, and she opened it. She was like, I will. And she started using nice terms with him on the phone. And I'm watching her talk to him. And finally, I see him slam the phone down and get in his car and speed off. And it was like, wow. And she was like, get dressed, we're going to dinner. You're going to eat tonight, you know. And she gave me strength. Like, I had never talked to him like that without him trying to beat me within an inch of my life. So I simply said to him the next time he called, look, I'm ready to die, because it was always, I'm going to kill you. I always had a fear that he would always tell me that he would kill me and my mother would never find my body. And my mother always talked about a cousin of hers who was killed by a man, and they never found her body, and how hurtful that was, that they never found her cousin's body. So when he said that to me, I thought about my mother, and I never wanted her to have that kind of pain. So I said to him during the phone call, I said to him, I'm ready to die. I had put on all the favorite jewelry that I liked, and I would wear it every day in case he killed me. And I said, all I ask is that you put my body somewhere my mom can find it. That's all I ask you. But I'm tired, and I'm ready to go if I have to die. And he left me alone. I had taken my power back from him. Every time he would call, I hang the phone up, curse him out. There's a way I saw my roommate curse him out and hang the phone up. And I remember one night I was coming from class with a guy who I went to high school with. We went to the same college. And we were standing there talking, and I just froze right in the middle of the conversation. And he said, what's wrong? And I was just staring, and he turned around and he saw his car pass. And he said, you don't have to be scared. He said, you want me to tell my daddy? And I said, no, I don't want your daddy involved. And he said, no, I'm gonna tell my daddy, you know. You don't have to be afraid of him. Like I said, everybody in my community knew what was going on. He said, if you want this to stop, it can stop. And like, the next day his dad was on campus. And his dad stayed on campus for like a week. And his dad said to me, he said, if I see him, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him for him. You have to be scared. If you're ready for this to stop, it's gonna stop. So it was at that point that I knew that it was safe for me and I was empowered. I'd taken my power back from him. And it was the best feeling that I'd ever had. So what people don't understand about abuse and human trafficking is it's more than just the physical. It's more of the mental and the emotional. And you and I said we'll talk about the trauma and Stockholm syndrome. The first thing everybody wants to know is, why didn't you leave? First thing my husband asked me when I told him my story, why didn't you get away? And I said to him, I said, I'm going to give you 3 days to go and do your research about abuse and sex trafficking, and then we'll talk. And he went and did his research, and he called me with all the information, and he understood a little bit better why you don't leave. What is Stockholm syndrome? And it's more like, when we talk about it, Stockholm syndrome is a great, nice word that they use today, but the old term was brainwashing. People don't believe in brainwashing, and it was brainwashing is what Stockholm syndrome basically is. It's brainwashing. And the trauma that is left from that goes on for years and years and years. I do a support group with women who've been through various abuse, sexual, emotional, domestic violence. We do it every quarter. In our last quarter, we talked about trauma brain. And these women didn't understand what trauma brain was. And I said, when you look it up, I'm a nurse. So when we look up traumatic brain injury or trauma brain, what comes up is a traumatic brain injury from a fall or an accident or something happening. We don't address the issue of a trauma brain, and that's how we function every day in trauma. So the book Don't Match the Cover became of that, because once I finished with the the physical part of the abuse, I started to live a normal life. I graduated, went to nursing school, worked, project manager, project developer, program manager, director of programs, and I lived a normal life. So when people started to hear my story, who knew me, they were like, there's no way this happened to you. Are you having a nervous breakdown? Are you making this up? What is going on? Because I lived a normal life, but through trauma brain. It's when the book Don't Match the Cover, like I said, came about. It was like, I did, in November 2020 was my rebirth. I started to live and talk about the trauma part of my abuse. All my life I talked about that I'd been sexually abused, but I never dealt with the trafficking and the trauma that went along with that. So I started to deal with that during that time. And that's when people started to know my real story and what had really happened. And it was difficult for people to process, like I said, because I hadn't had a nervous breakdown as far as they knew. I was going to work, I was functioning, I'd become a mother, a wife. How could this have happened to you? And you have not had shown any signs of it. But we live in trauma. And I started to embrace the fact that you are not normal. You've been through a lot, more than most people have ever been through or will ever go through. And it's time that you start to address that. And that became very difficult for people who knew me, the old me, and what I once was.
So what do you do in your charity?
One thing is education, is to educate people to know about sex trafficking, human trafficking, what it really is, and what happens, like I said. Because one of the biggest things that people don't understand is, like I said, why didn't you leave? So when you see young girls, they don't want to talk about their issue because they don't want the stigma that goes behind it. And I let them know that I still go through that, because I'll meet people and, you know, I have a running joke with my girlfriends. When I want to get rid of family members, I tell them my story. And then they stop calling because people don't know what to do with that, you know. So a part of that is to try to help young women embrace what they've been through and to work their way through it, through the trauma, help them to find resources that may be beneficial for them. My long-term goal is to have a facility for survivors to be able to transition back into society after they've come out of trafficking.
Do you run support groups?
We have a support group every quarter. We have one this month that's coming up, a support group, and we do it online with women. And we have women from all over the country that come to the support group, and we talk about issues surrounding whatever. Like this month we have, we're going to talk about what is it like when we tell our family and we disclose our stories.
What can we look for, and what do you recommend or suggest that we can say, aside from stranger danger, that we can help our younger generation?
And the one thing I always tell parents when parents ask that question, similar to yours, is you have to open up dialogue with your kids and be open with them. And you have to talk about things that are uncomfortable for parents to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's not a pocketbook, it's not a garage, it's a vagina. Mm-hmm. It's not a weenie, it's not a sausage, it's a penis. And when you empower your children with those things, and they're able to come to you and talk to you about things that may be happening to them. So I'm going to tell you, when you come from my background, you're always on guard. You know, we talk to our children very young about the things that I'm telling you about. And we worked at HIV, so we were very open. But when I came in, and then your daughter came in, and she was on the playground by herself, mm-hmm. I was simply panicked. I need to say that. Because you had her on the playground by herself. Mm-hmm. And it takes a second for a perpetrator. A predator knows. They're watching. I try to explain it like you get up every day and go to work, and your job is important, and you pay attention to your job. That's just the way predators do. every day. Like I told you, the first night I spent that outside my mother's home. And for years I was baffled about that till I became educated, and he had been planning that the first time he can get his hands on me, he knew he had to do that in order to get me. So when I saw your baby come in, and she was on the playground by herself, it was like, oh my God. You know, how do I say, don't let your baby be on the playground by herself. Even though you're watching out that window. You were watching her, right?
Yeah.
And you were keeping an eye on her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I tell my daughter, she's in college, you got to move every day, every second, like someone's watching you.
Yeah, that's true.
And before she got to college, of course, she's a teenager, she thinks I'm over the top, she knew my story, it's not gonna happen, blah, 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 until she started hearing it. Mia, the girl who was killed in Orlando, that was her friend. And it wasn't until Mia's death that she realized the importance of what I was saying to her. You know? So you gotta open up dialogue, you gotta talk constantly. She's old enough. People say, what is the age that, you know, I should start talking to my kids? When they can talk? When they can talk, you know? And you have to have the hardcore conversations with them. You know, you have to. You guys have been watching the news, and every week, I swear it's every week, a teacher is being arrested, or they have two married couple right now, today on the news, molesting the 13-year-old girl. The parents trusted them from church. Every day it's happening. 1 in 4 kids are sexually abused. Everybody in the family send their kids to me because it's uncomfortable for them. Talk to your nanny, talk to your auntie, go talk to your nana about, so, is going to school and she's going off to college. I give condom packets, I talk to them about safe sex and everything. We cannot be afraid to talk about sex because that's what happens to them. So we have to empower our children. So we have to stop the secrets in our families. We have to be able to say what it is. If it's a duck, it's a duck. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Let's call it what it is and let's deal with that. That's the first thing. We have to stop keeping the secrets, and we have to be able to, again, like I said, open up dialogue and communication in the family and talk about issues that are going on, so that if something's going on with this baby, she'll be able to come to someone and say, if she can't go to her mom, she can go to her uncle, her aunt, or somebody and say, this is what's happening. That's what happened to the 13-year-old girl who's being abused by the church people.
Well, when it comes to anything involving sex, it's always kind of like, oh, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time. We have the hardest time. Tamara and I are trying to get in the school system to talk and educate the kids, but we have to change our whole narrative about what we're saying to the kids and da 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 da. They don't want this said, they don't want that said, and it's like we forget what the WWW stands for, right? That's the World Wide Web.
Oh, yeah.
So when you put a computer in your kid's hand and you put a phone in your kid's hand, you have exposed them to the world.
Absolutely.
But yet you got a problem with me talking about sex with your kid? When they're seeing all kinds of stuff, they're hearing all kinds of stuff, they're exposed to all kinds of stuff, and you worry about me coming in to talk about sex to educate them? Not pornography, not to be, out of line, but something that's going to benefit your kid, but yet you have a phone in their hand. They can pop into the DMs or pop in whatever. The perpetrators, that's what they do. So you're worried about me saying the word sex to your kids when you got someone asking them to send naked pictures of themselves. I cannot tell you how many countless parents I've talked to over the years who have had daughters who've sent pictures out, risky pictures out.
If you are in Sunrise, Florida, please visit our club. You can find the meeting times on our club website. I have a video on the history of Rotary and my personal goals in joining Rotary. What is Rotary? We have a short video that we downloaded from the Rotary International website that explains the many goals of Rotary International.